Coming to you live from deep within an icy and wait. No, actually we are icy now. It's pretty much winter now where I am. I know that sounds ridiculous because it's only October, but that's where I live. And windy and also sometimes sunny, radioactive meme land. We are the survivors of the alt-right apocalypse, the few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the froggy hordes with Rantzerker 96, Michael Kimmel's red pill with teal deer. Yes, we are going through the estimable feminist and social theorizer, Michael Kimmel's contribution.
Alison, hello? Hold on. Alison.
And Brian Martinez, the Doge of Venice. Is there some issues with the sound? Inevitably, there usually are.
All right. No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
But you didn't do the funny voice.
No, because I couldn't hear you. Your audio just dropped completely while you were talking.
So was Discord. It dropped for me as well. Discord's being a prat.
Oh, for fuck's sake! So, how much did we miss?
You were basically just doing the intro. You talked about Michael Kimmel, and then whoop.
Okay, so, let me start all that. I'll start with Michael Kimmel because God knows we need to hear about him some more.
Oh yeah.
All right. Apologies, folks. Not exactly sure why that happened. All right. Yes, we are going to be going through the estimable feminist and social theorizer, Michael Kimmel's contributions to Cassie Jaye's documentary, The Red Pill. If you don't know what The Red Pill's about, it's about her introduction to the men's rights movement. With me today is Mike Stevenson, otherwise known as Dr. Rantzerker Ham.
That'll do. That's my new name now.
That's it.
In triple brackets.
Teal Deer, the cyan survey of citations. Credit to the Mexican.
I would take it.
And Brian Martinez, the Doge of Venice. If you're watching this through Karen's channel, please go to Honey Badger Radio or the Badger Live Streams channel to join in the chat. And if you don't want to wake up one morning and find Honey Badger Radio gone from the tubes, I suggest you go over to our RSS aggregator I set up at badgerfeed.com and sign up for notifications or bookmark it, whatever. And if you're listening to this as an unedited stream, we are going to be moving to a digest format for our podcast in the future. If you want to continue to have access to our unedited verbal diarrhea, and why wouldn't you want that sprayed all over your proverbial walls, you're going to have to sign up at badgerfeed.com as well. Finally, this stream will be gamified. We will go through 1/3 of Michael Kimmel's offering up for free. Then we'll continue with the second 1/3, and we'll continue as long as you supply us with super chats. The final 1/3 will be an after show. The largest single super chat we get will win a prize of epic renown. So ready those chats, folks, and let's begin. All right. Are we ready? Oh, wait. Fuck.
I'm ready, but you guys got to get into the side tubes.
Okay, let's get into the side tubes.
Are you in there, Dr. Rantzerker Haram?
Dr. Rantzerker Ham?
Give me a second. It's pronounced Rantzerker Ham.
Oh, Rantzerker Ham. Is that correct?
That's exactly the right amount of syllables.
Are you sure I didn't miss one? Maybe I should say it again.
Yeah, do it. No, don't do it again.
We'll just do that until Teal Deer get. Oh, there we go. All right,
I'm here.
Okay, good. Let's start.
All in there? Okay, I'm gonna hit. Yeah, I'm gonna hit the button.
Do we live in a patriarchy?
If by patriarchy we mean rule of the fathers, no. Do we live in a society that is based fundamentally on gender inequality? Yes. Do we still have persistent gender?
Do we want to stop for the banana? I don't know if Cassie's going to hit us with a copyright thing for this, but we might not want to push it. Do we live in a society of gender inequality? Well, of course we do, according to Michael Kimmel. Anyone want to supply anything while we split the banana?
I noticed he couldn't just say no. You have to say, yes, but I have a different word for it for this purpose.
Because rule of the father doesn't seem to apply. He says, no, we don't live in a society where it's rule of the father. However, there is still gender equality. Yeah, still my women's.
And my patriarchies, even though patriarchy literally means rule by the father.
Yeah, but this is the new definition, the new speak version of patriarchy. The ever-evolving.
This is patriarchy TM, as opposed to normal patriarchy.
Skepticism TM.
Pickle Rick!
What? All right, let's go. I think this is only going to get more ridiculous as we go.
In interpersonal relationships, in institutional arrangements, yes. If you want to call that patriarchy, you can call it patriarchy. I call it gender inequality.
Okay. And do we live in a rape culture?
Again, by rape culture, here's the question. Do you know any women who don't think about this when they go out at night?
What?
What?
The question wasn't, do we live in a think rape culture or a rape think culture, Michael?
Do we live in a culture of slight paranoia?
What? One would presume very few, since feminists have constantly talked about there being a rape culture where men use rape to keep women under... What? Well, but the thing is, if feminists are successful to raise awareness about rape culture, then all women are going to be paranoid, are they not? How can you then turn around and use the presence of that paranoia to prove rape culture?
He's really asking is the conditioning working? Yes.
Yes, the conditioning is working, Michael Kimmel. You are putting women all into a state of fear over some unfounded assertions. Congratulations. Yay! This is the man who advocates for women.
Yeah, it really is actually a learned behavior as well. I read a study which was done, I believe it might have been in Finland or one of the Scandinavian countries, about people's fear of going out at night. And when you compared those countries to like other European countries, which are obviously more south, so they don't have the full days of night and nights of day sort of stuff as the seasons change, that in those countries there was a really different attitude to it, and women didn't actually fear the night more than the day. Actually, no one did, men and women both. They were just, they didn't really consider night to be a time that you should be scared of anything, because obviously you've got daytime hours which are dark. So it really is just like, yeah, if you constantly tell people night is when all of the bad things are going to happen to you, they do actually then internalize that message and then think that that's the case. So it is quite true that night is a social construct, apparently. Have at it, chat.
I think actually, surprisingly, this isn't really a gish galop, so we're moving pretty quickly through it. So we might get through.
Gish gallop.
Gish gallop.
Yeah, like a horse gallops. It doesn't gallop. I'm sorry.
In Canada, they do. They've got weird hooves.
I think those are moose. All right, let's do another 30 seconds.
Do you know any women who don't say, well, geez, I'm parked in a kind of remote parking lot, it's a little late, or, geez, it's getting kind of late, should I work should I stay in the library any longer?
Well, if they were honest about the statistics regarding rape, they probably wouldn't. In fact, if you were honest about the statistics regarding any kind of violent assault, men would be more likely to be paranoid about walking across a parking lot in the middle of the night. But you're not. So, congratulations.
Well, that's because privilege, You're privileged by being given the agency to fight back. Women, they just don't have that agency or something. No woman has ever carried pepper spray or a taser or a kibaton or something like that. Doesn't happen.
Defense is a social construct.
Hey, Michael Kimmel. All men are angry and afraid of women. What does that prove, Michael Kimmel? Let's just say it's true. What does that prove? Does that prove that they are all right to have these feelings? Or does it just prove that they're all wrong to have these feelings, Michael?
Social consensus on an issue does not make that issue more correct or less correct.
I just want to say that it's absolute, like, listening to Michael Kimmel is sort of soul destroying. However, listening to you guys respond to Michael Kimmel is soul uplifting somehow. How does that work? I don't know, but it is.
I think that's why we do this.
Yeah.
Okay. But the lols uplift everyone.
Yeah. Actually, just talking about his the thing about parking lots, as he's calling them, car parks, to those of us who actually speak the language correctly. This is something which has come up with feminists and has basically become a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, because there have been cases of feminists advocating for female-only parking spaces, which are normally larger than regular bays. The reasoning behind that is, women, they'll have the parking places closest to the buildings that the car park is associated with. There's more space in between the cars. There's more lighting set up so that, those rapacious men just can't hide in between the cars and abduct them and drag them in between them. And there's more space for, people to come and intervene should anything like that happen. And then, of course, we had the feminist response to this, which was, well, why do they have to be bigger and better lit spaces? Are you trying to say that women aren't as good at parking and driving as men? Which, well, if you actually look at studies around things like spatial awareness and actual parking ability, yes, men on average do. Their mean is higher than that of women. So, do you want to go there, feminists? No, probably not. But to me, that was just a perfect example of the feminist narrative. It's like, oh, well, this thing is going to stop rape culture, but in order to stop this rape culture thing, we have to be really sexist. It's almost like, as we've covered this, I think, numerous times on HBR, and as you guys have all brought up at some point, inevitably it's the safety versus liberty, protection versus liberty sort of thing. If you want to be protected, you necessarily have to be treated different from a certain kind of norm, or you have to give up some sort of freedom in order to do that. So you end up in a perpetual, just cycle of you can never do anything right for doing wrong.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. I think the ultimate goal is shame. That is the ultimate destination of all of this, is shame. All right.
I'm to my room. Maybe I should go back home. I don't know about going out by myself late at night down in this neighborhood. Any women
Isn't this
don't
mansplaining?
think about that? Okay, so we live in a weird culture.
Probably.
And she shakes
totally
her head.
did. Well, yeah, he said, "Do you know women that don't think like that?" And she said, "No." And he said, "Okay, then we live in a rape culture. I've just displayed a few anecdotes, and you have confirmed them. Therefore, truth."
And
it's bizarre. It's like, okay, can you find examples of men who have sort of thought, I'm not going to go to that area, I'm not going to walk down that alley in case I'm mugged, or something like that. Can you find men who have done that? Well, yes. Are there areas where, if you're a certain ethnicity in the West, you just don't go, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman? Has anyone ever considered that and then avoided those sorts of things? Well, there you go. Confirmed. We live in a violence culture. We live in a mugging culture.
Well, I mean, I'm in my 40s, and there's parts of Chicago I'll never go into, like straight up road warrior sections of the city. So
with or without the MAGA hat.
Oh yeah, forget forget wearing a hat. I'll get killed in the fucking, the hipster neighborhoods. Well, probably not killed, but
gummed.
Maybe they'd throw their coffee at me if they didn't spend too much on it.
Yeah,
but it's frappuccino, so you'll be fine.
Yeah, everybody knows that Mexicans repel frappuccino.
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right. Shall we do another 30 seconds? There was something that I was going to say to this, but it's like, once again, you haven't really proven rape culture as in a systemic.
All he's basically displayed is that women are afraid of men.
Yes, but that could be because of a systemic group of people promoting false statistics about rape. It doesn't prove that men are coming together to put women down by putting their penises inside them without consent.
Yeah, it's okay. What you have to look at here, I think, is, okay, well, what is the origin of the fear, and then is the fear proportional to the threat? So if you've got a bunch of people constantly telling you as a woman, oh, it's basically a coin flip whether or not you're going to be raped and beaten in your life, well, yes, women are then going to start being more scared about that. However, is that proportional to reality? Well, crime statistics would indicate that no, it isn't. It's just, I don't...
Also uses something that is true, well, that's sort of psychological about women, is that women tend to be risk averse, and they tend to be more sort of, conscious of whether or not they could be in danger. So they may make a mountain out of a molehill in terms of risk in order to avoid as much as possible, whereas men tend to take risks more often. So if you told a man, if you go, I heard there was a shooting in this area, or I hear there are muggers over here, most of the time men would just take that into consideration, but they're more likely to say, well, I'm going to go over there anyway because I got to do something over there, because I want to go through here, or I have to go through here. Whereas women are more likely to be like, well, maybe I should either, avoid it, or go with friends or whatever, but they definitely become more, cognizant of the risks involved, and they tend to be more risk averse. So you're compiling not only this, whether or not something is true or viable compared to what the narrative is, but then you also add in how women would typically react to it. So if you measured something by the way people who are extremely risk averse and paranoid and also have been fed a bunch of lies, if you measure their reaction to that as some measure of truth, then you're going to get the answer that you want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, your sample was not representative of a whole by any stretch.
And I would add that if you think about it in terms of hormonal differences and women being more risk adverse, it almost seems a little sinister for a group of people to base a philosophy on scaring the crap out of women and exploiting that biological feature that they have of being more risk adverse. You would think that they would be a little more careful about faking shit and saying things that could potentially scare women even more. Just considering. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's also that women have a higher preponderance of men to actually assess threat where there is no threat anyway. So, if you wanted to put it into a very general term, women are just naturally more worrisome about everything when compared to men on average. Obviously, there are exceptions because we have to put the disclaimer in, because this is the internet after all, and people are looking for any sort of quote mine. But on a general pattern, yes, women they're more likely to perceive danger, they're more likely to listen to people about danger, they're more likely to try to avoid the danger that they may have then falsely identified or had falsely identified to them. So it just forms a really big vicious cycle. I had a further point to add to that, but it's just kind of floated out of my mind.
Do we want to
come back? Well,
maybe it might, and I will.
It kind of relates to our evolution, to
the
hunter-gatherer thing. Men are hunters and women are gatherers. This is probably why. Go on, do your thing.
Yeah, it just came back to me then that this is why, you get, you see those articles like, oh, women...
Did we just lose the deer?
May have been, he may have gotten discorded.
Damn it.
Yeah, well, he just figures out his thought. It just floats back into his brain, and then he floats out of Discord.
While Tildeer is figuring out his audio, I was just going to co-sign what you said about how it's kind of insidious. And when you listen to the way Michael Kimmel delivers this, it's like this he comes from this place of concern, that sounds genuine, but what he's putting out there is incredibly destructive. And it reminds me, he's like, what's that character from Lord of the Rings that hung out with King Theoden and, like, you know, manipulated him? Is it Screema or Grima Wormtongue or whatever? Like this, you know, charismatic figure that's extremely manipulative and always has everyone's best intentions, but, you know, it's like this just insidious control thing. I mean, he literally, you know, he kind of takes control of Cassie for a second there, because he basically tells her what she should believe by manipulating his language to get her to agree with a position, you know, whether it's valid or invalid. Oh, he's back.
I would.
Yeah, my computer decided to do its. I'm going to go into power saving because you haven't done anything for like 10 minutes. Apparently, it doesn't count Discord as being a thing, so I must sit and jiggle my mouse. Yes.
Giggity.
Absolutely.
Oh. Okay. Another 30 seconds.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to get that thing out, which my computer decided the internet needed not to hear.
Yeah, get your thing out.
Yeah, I will get my thing out for the internet for the right amount of money. Chat. Anyway, moving on to moving back to that. It's why when I see these, you know, this women declare air conditioning to be sexist sort of things, and you know, it's all well and good to like write it off and say like, oh, feminism be crazy, yo. It's given women all of these fears, and to cite, you know, the whole, it's the cultural Marxist way of controlling the people and things like that. But I think in a lot of ways that's not really going to be the case. Like, how many of these, you know, hundreds or thousands of women who make these sort of ridiculous complaints are, you know, brushed up on the finer points of feminist literature? I mean, I'd argue that probably not very many of them. You know, they might be the, you know, the small f feminist, you know, what Brian constantly says, and I think he's completely correct about it. You know, if you ask them, are you a feminist, they'll say no, but then if you ask them, you know, are women disadvantaged, do they earn less, yada yada yada, they'll probably say, yeah, of course they are. You know, and that's why when they make these ridiculous things like, oh, the air conditioning is too low, it's sexist, and it's because it's, you know, it's all a danger to me, I actually think that they genuinely believe it, like that it's not just some meme from feminism for them. It's as a result of, you know, the more likely to identify threats, more likely to then be scared of things, and so on and so forth.
Yep, exactly. Thank you for that.
I would also add to that. I don't think feminism helps by inflating shit. Unless that was already covered. Because
feminism absolutely doesn't help. No, of course it doesn't. But I think that if you're trying to pin the entirety of it onto feminism, I think that it might be sort of somewhat missing the mark. Like in that instance, what feminism is doing is an exploitation of a more naturally inclined behavior.
Yeah. Steroids into things like you know, gynocentrism and some of our natural behavior. It's basically just injecting it with steroids.
It's a full-on exploitation of it. Yeah,
the whole point of civilization is, you know, to put mechanisms in place to get our higher natures out there and our worse natures, you know, so we don't murder each other and rape each other and shit. The last thing we need is mechanisms that take our nature and make it even fucking worse. So, you know, maybe we do need some kind of social mechanism in place to remind us all that women can be skittish sometimes and wrong about things. rather than a mechanism in place to tell women they're right about everything they fucking fear and hate. I don't know.
Well, that would require recognizing a subjectivity that exists outside of women, I would imagine.
You know what? I'm just going to go full on here. I will reference the Coltane video about, was it dogs and air conditioning or something like that. You know, he gave the example of pareidolia before making this other point, and it's like, you know, pareidolia being the thing, you know, where you see faces in things, you know, like a 2-pin electrical socket can look like a face. You can have 2 eyes and like a screw at the bottom to form a mouth and things like that. You know, if you put feminism into that context, feminism is the thing that's actually like, yeah, those actually are faces that are looking at you. They're watching you. If you put it into that context, that's what feminism's doing. It's saying, yes, you're right that you're seeing those faces.
And also that they are oppressing you.
Yes. And they want to hurt you.
Oh, fuck. It's like a paranoia factory. All right, let's do the next.
Okay.
We live in a culture in which rape is on people's minds, on women's minds. If 51% of the population is concerned about something, and the 49% who love them and care about them, who are married to them, who love them, who are their fathers.
Okay, wait a second.
Like
are perpetuating this horror on them, apparently.
Like, so the 51% don't love women. The other 49% are the ones who are there to love women, and women aren't there to love anyone. This is a fucking web of false dichotomies, Kimmel. I think you know you're doing this. I think you know it fucking turns people's minds to mush when they're listening to you.
But you're just, Kimmel, you're proposing that the 49% of people who love women also hate them. Because that's rape culture.
He also makes the assertion that the other 51% are all afraid. All women. Yes, yep. All women.
Of the people who presumably love them. They're afraid of that.
Let's see what he gets to, and maybe he doesn't say that. Let's see what he actually says. Let's go back a teeny bit.
Yeah, I just want to point out to him again, it's like, yeah, if 51% of people are concerned about something, but is the concern proportional to the threat?
Is it real?
Yeah, it's like 51% of people can think things, but that doesn't mean it's correct. I mean, reference those studies by an author whose name completely escapes me. But it was a group of people measuring, they were looking at a line, and they were all told, oh, you're all like subjects in this experiment, but in reality only one of them was. The other half dozen or so people were plants. And when they said, okay, here is a line, and here is 3 other lines, can you tell me which line is, you know, the same, like the same length as this other line? And the group was instructed, like, you're always going to name the wrong line. Like, you're always going to say that, like, the line shorter than the example line is correct. And the person who was actually having the experiment done on them, because it was about conformity to, or likelihood to conform to group ideas. And on the first time, when the rest of the group misidentified the corresponding line, they would normally say, well, no, obviously it's that one. What are you all doing? But then the second and third times, they'd fall into line with what the group was telling them, and they'd start saying, yeah, no, these people are right. They would start agreeing with something which was objectively incorrect right in front of them. You know, reality didn't cease to matter because of social pressure. So, again, is this proportional? If you are telling people this is a thing, and you've got friends who tell you that this is a thing, there is only so long that you can go until it's like, you know, you sort of stop saying, well, my actual experience of all of this is that what you're saying is complete nonsense, but you'll just kind of be like, well, maybe, and then eventually, yeah.
I want to point something out here. Okay, essentially what Kimmel is saying, and I understand the misperception stuff, but also this I think goes right to the heart of the insanity. He's saying 51% of the population is terrified of 59% and see them as a bunch of sexual sadists and savages who want to oppress them, and that want to oppress the 51%, and that the 59% that loves them should be concerned about the perception by that 51% that thinks that they're sexual sadists and savages, and try to change that perception, not challenge the perception, but change it somehow. I just find it fascinating that he is appealing to men's love for women to be concerned that women see men as horrible beasts that don't love them. but not to say to women, hey, wait a second, could you stop seeing us that way? It's hurtful. But rather to continuously monitor themselves and their minor behaviors and microaggressions to somehow pamper the 51%, the women's perception that there are horrible sexual sadists who want to hurt them. So he's appealing to men's love for women to try and support the notion that men don't love women and want to rape them in women. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, it's a very convoluted web of false dichotomy. So you've done a very good job of unraveling it there. But it's convoluted stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. I don't know how his brain can push that out of his mouth. Let's
see where he goes. Actually, it gets better. It gets better.
Oh, does it? Do you mean better sarcastic? Do you mean better sarcastically?
Yeah, I mean sarcastically.
Okay, all right.
I mean, later on in this interview, he says, pretty much words to the effect of, "Well, men are just afraid of women, and that's wrong of them." That's how long it takes him to flip between worlds.
Oh, well, let's not spoil it for the people. You know, let's not do the spoiler thing.
This is 19 minutes long. We're not getting through the whole thing.
Okay, all right, continue.
Who love them, who are their fathers, who are their sons, who care about them. If we all, can't, don't think about this a lot, then yes, we live in a rape culture. Does this mean that every man is a rapist?
Okay, wait a second. So if men who love women don't acknowledge the fact that women are afraid of them and don't think they love them, then we live in a rape culture. So men who love women have to convince women that or support the notion that they don't love women and want to rape them, or we live in a rape culture. What the fuck kind of, how? Okay, I'm just saying. Did we hear all of what he had to say, or am I interrupting?
I think there's a little bit more. He goes into another. This is the part where I was like, what? Here we go.
Then yes, we live in a rape culture. Does this mean that every man is a rapist? Absolutely not. Does this mean, in fact, what are we talking about? We're talking about like 4 or 5% of men, maybe at most. Most men don't rape. The overwhelming majority don't rape. So if you're saying, is rape normative? Is it like a rite of passage?
Okay, stop. Well, what are you saying? You're saying
I
that...
want to say something at least positive here. Does this mean that all men aren't rapists? I agree. He agrees. Yay. Yes. Something positive. We all agree that not all men are rapists. In fact, it's a very small minority of them. Yay. Positive stuff.
This is the bit that bent my brain a little bit, though. Kimmel admits 5% maybe of men. Of course, he leaves women out because women, they can't rape anybody. I mean, what are you talking? They're too weak and afraid of everything else to rape anybody. But maybe 5% of men rape women. So he admits that the percentage of people who are actually capable of doing something like that is incredibly small. And yet the fear that women might have, 100% legitimate. Not only legitimate, but worthy of us naming that fear rape culture. Despite the fact that it's so not prevalent, not a thing. So he's admitting that it's a ridiculously low number of people that actually commit it, but that women's feelings about it make it legitimate.
I want to know where he got the 5% of men are rapists thing from. Because that sounds
Between
very...
his large and small intestine is where he got
it. That might explain it. But yeah, I find it very hard to believe that it's as high as 5%. I mean, maybe 1%. Or less than 1%. I don't know, but I would like to know where he got that from.
I mean, it depends on your definition of rape, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I get the feeling that maybe it's including things like sex under the influence of drugs and alcohol and things like that. You know, the Mary Koss nonsense where it's like, no, you were raped, but it wasn't really because you continued dating and married your, it's all that sort of silly things. But yeah, even if we took 5% as being the legitimate number, which I highly doubt that it is, then yeah, he's basically just effectively said, well, in that case, the fear that is related to it is not proportional. Like 100% of women being scared of like 5% or less of the population, and then that being a legitimate fear, that's not a proportional thing. Yeah, it's like one person who got mugged that one time suddenly being like, okay, let's say you get jumped by, let's say you're white and you get jumped by a group of black people, and then you start having a fear of black people, like just all of them. Would that response be proportional to the stimulus? And the answer is no, it wouldn't.
We might call that racism.
Can I just... I'm still astounded that... and sometimes it's just really hard to follow the logic. So hard that I'm having trouble even remembering the logic. But it seems to be that he's saying that women are afraid of rape, even though that he admits that it's a very small minority of men who rape. And that men who love women need to acknowledge this fear as legitimate, or we live in a rape culture.
In a rape culture, no matter what. Even because I think most men probably do think that women's fears of less than 5% of the population is legitimate, because most men white knight for women for their fears. So if a woman says,
this is a Kafka trap. I just realized it. If you don't believe it, you're part of rape culture. And if you do, and the only thing you can do is believe it and then say, yeah, we're part of rape culture. So if you disagree with the notion, you prove rape culture right there, because that's rape culture. And if you agree with the notion that there's rape culture, then obviously there's a rape culture. This is a Kafka trap. I just realized. He's just set up a fucking Kafka trap.
Grima Wormtongue.
Get out of that room. Now I'm feeling defensive of Cassie. Get away from her.
She knows what she's doing, man. I don't think she's even getting led by him. She's just smiling and nodding.
Yeah.
She's made of tough stuff, that old bird.
Yeah, okay. Let's continue.
Let's do it.
Am I saying that, that all heterosexual sex is really rape? No, of course not. But am I saying that everyone has to deal with this? Everyone has to contend with this? Everyone ought to think about this? That we ourselves, or the women that we love, have to think about these sorts of things? To me, that's morally unconscionable.
What?
It's unconscionable that people I care about have to think about the violation of their
Well,
bodies.
then don't promote.
So, to me, that...
People I care about have to think. Did you hear that? People I care about have to think. It's so awful. Fuck you, Kimmel.
But
the fact that people might have to consider that their home could be invaded and their property rights violated is proof we live in a burglar culture, and it's completely unreasonable that anyone should ever have to consider home safety. Look, bad people exist. They are going to do bad things. You can either ignore it, at which point you will have no means or methods of dealing with it if it happens, or you can acknowledge that reality is imperfect and terrible people do exist, and then put into place something or some sort of mechanism or method of prevention, and then still dealing with it if something happens and the prevention is not sufficient.
Can I just point something out here? All right. I'm going to address this to Michael Kimmel, because why the fuck not? If you really wanted to reduce the rate of rape, actually reduce the rate at which women were raped, you would address the fact that boys are being sexually abused. Not just by men, but also by women. In fact, that's the largest risk factor for a boy to go on to become a rapist of children or adult women. If you right now started to recognize the rate of rape of boys and young men, and started to put interventions in place to recognize and help them, you could eradicate the rape of women. You could get rid of it completely. This is what's so bizarre about this entire situation. If you actually cared about women being raped, you would talk about the rape of men, and you would put in place services for men who have experienced rape. But you don't seem to care about women being raped enough to actually care about the proven causal factors that cause young men to become rapists. You don't care about it enough. You don't care about it outside of this bizarre, elaborate scheme to make all men ashamed of a vanishing minority of extremely damaged men who have not just been damaged by the abusers, and which has led to the cycle of abuse, also damaged by a system that's ignored it. And it's, I'm sorry, Michael, that's unconscionable.
No, it's because they threw out people like Erin Pitsey, who, when she was doing her running her female shelters, she realized that most of the women who came in were just as violent and abusive as the men that they'd left, and some were actually the perpetrators of these things, and actively said violence and abuse and things like this are intergenerational problems. They are things perpetuated by adults onto the children, and then the children grow up to become abusers themselves in most cases. And that was then thrown out because, well, you can't acknowledge that women abuse people or abuse children or abuse their partners or anything like that. This is the road that feminism took, 40 years ago now? 50 years ago? They just decided, no, women cannot possibly do this, and therefore we must never talk about it and never address this thing. Which basically, as far as I can see, means that feminism will never, ever deal with things like intergenerational violence or intergenerational problems like that. Because they've refused already, and thus they've built this big, elaborate theorem of everything around the idea that women cannot perpetrate these things, or cannot perpetrate them on a scale where it could possibly have any sort of greater impact.
And that means that they don't care about ending rape. They don't care about stopping rape. They don't care about reducing the number of women who rape, or who rape and are raped. They don't care about that. They literally just care about getting rid of rape culture, which has nothing to do.
If they got rid of it, they'd lose the cash cow. And there is a reason why feminism is a multi-million-dollar industry worldwide. If they actually dealt with the problems that they fight against, you'd put however many thousands of people out of jobs.
Yes.
It's not just the money, though. I think they're addicted to tragedy. In the same way I'm addicted to comedy. In the same way healthy people are addicted to comedy, that they need to laugh to get through their day. I think people...
Ambulance chasers.
I won't say people like the idea that there's rape everywhere, but it just makes them feel more secure. They just, like a drug addict feels normal when they're on their drug. Everything feels right with the world when it's full of hideous tragedy, and only towards the people I care about. You know what I mean?
I just find it amazing because he's revealed something really incredible here. He said that the problem is women's fear of rape. Not the rape itself, but their fear of rape. An emotional state, a thought. And how do you combat an emotional state or a thought? You end up in an endless battle against something ephemeral that's constantly changing. They don't care about ending rape, or at least they don't care enough. They don't care if what they embrace actually causes more women to be raped. And I know that because I've talked to feminist advocates, so-called victims advocates, who would prioritize not quote-unquote victim blaming over preventing actual rape. So obviously they think that there's something worse than rape, and that would be victim blaming. So he literally is focused, instead of reducing rape, on somehow getting rid of women's fear of rape while embracing a method, a conjecture, a feminist conjecture that actually inflates all the statistics around women's rape. So he's embracing a feminist conjecture that inflates the statistics and terrifies women about rape by inflating the statistics, inflating their potential victimhood, inflating their vulnerability. And then he turns around and says that the real problem is the fear women have. he has just created a money spinner for himself. This is a money spinner, guys. The real problem isn't rape. The real problem is women's fear of rape. Oh, by the way, 9 out of every 5 women will be raped. And then that 10th woman out of every 5 that will be raped, she'll be double, triple, quadruple raped. And also, she'll be raped in ways that she can't even conceive of. And the 11th woman out of every 5 that's going to be raped, oh, she's going to be raped to death. And let's keep pushing this stuff. This provably wrong information that increases the rate of fear, and then turn around and say that the fear itself is rape culture and we need to address it. You are creating the disease and selling the cure, which is probably trick number 1 in a con artist's grab bag of tricks.
But in a way, there's a little bit of me doesn't doubt his sincerity. I mean, I know I said he probably knows what he's doing to some degree, but like I said with the tragedy addiction, I think that's a little bit of sincerity that holds the fucking long con in place. They genuinely think they're doing the right thing. You reckon?
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, I can actually give something that will back that up completely, because I think you're actually correct about that. There have been studies done around things like moral outrage, and a lot of them have found that, outrage, basically professing interest in third-party concerns. That is basically the definition of moral outrage. Something bad hasn't happened to you, but something bad has happened to someone else or might happen to someone else. And people raising their voices about that is basically completely self-serving. There's a study done by Rothschild and Kiefer. I think it was last year. Maybe it was this year. Either 2016 or 2017. And it was actually just about moral outrage. And what it does, or what they found about it, was that people expressing moral outrage about these third-party things are doing so because it's a method of alleviating guilt, and it forms basically a buffer to any sort of threat to their own moral identity. So in a lot of cases, people who are outraged by those own things, they're doing so because it makes them feel more secure in themselves. Because basically it's if they've done something bad or are guilty about something else, they can put it on to something else like that. They can take the attention away from themselves, the negative attention away from themselves, put the negative attention on something else, and then get positive feedback based on that behavior. And yes, that is something that is going to be addictive to people, because obviously when you have social acceptance and things like that, when you get along with that in-group which you're, now rubbing shoulders with, because you're all saying that thing over there is bad and we're the good people dealing with it, you get endorphin rushes, you get oxytocin rushes, and those things are addictive. It's the same thing that people get, you spend time with each other and you really like each other and things like that. People say that love is a drug. Well, love has been found to have, similar effects to the brain as things like cocaine and whatnot. Because of that, partly of the oxytocin rush there. So that's kind of all that needs to be said.
When you put money on top of that, it's like a gambler. It puts dopamine on top of that. You get it from all directions. Exactly
right. So yeah, you say that like with some degree of unsurety, I think, but all evidence that we have points that, yeah, you're completely correct. Doing this moral, grandstanding, busybody nonsense is addictive to people. It makes them feel good. It protects their in-group. It protects their sense of identity. And thus they do it over and over and over.
So essentially he's addicted to his identity to the point where he's even willing to encourage false statistics, or not even question the process of turning women into victims, because it generates some good feelings to feel like the hero. Okay,
well, this is an intervention, Kimmel. We're not enabling you anymore.
Yeah, we're not.
Well, consider one other thing as well, and that's the rate at which feminists and SJW types have been found to be basically fucking awful people. I mean, I can't remember all the names because I'm really bad at them, but I'm sure I could poke Brian and say, Brian, which ones of them have all been found to be kiddie fiddlers, rapists, harassers, and things like that?
Murderers.
Which ones?
Though.
You know what? Let's not even. Let's. First of all, I think that we should get some more time on the
Yeah.
clock. And
Yeah.
second of all, it's sort of a morbid thing to do that.
Yeah, but
Suffice to
okay,
say that
we
this
won't
is
go
a
through
thing.
all the names, but again, you find that these people, and many of them have those sort of darker elements to the past there, and then when you combine that with the concepts of moral outrage and how self-serving it is and the addiction to it, it then makes perfect sense that those sorts of people engage in that kind of virtue signaling behavior, because it takes that negative attention, it alleviates that sense of guilt onto themselves. This is why you get that guy whose name I can't remember, who was like, well, yeah, of course I want to be a rape coach. So yeah, I'm a rapist, and of course I want to be a rape coach because I get a room full of hot, young, vulnerable girls.
Yeah. Shall we?
On that bombshell.
Yeah. on that note.
Unconscionable that people I care about have to think about the violation of their bodies like that. So to me, that's, if you want, you can call it what you like, but it's a culture in which every woman I know, and that includes, my mother and my wife and my students and and all of the women who are my friends, and all of them have to think about this. Then it's a cultural problem and not a problem of bad individuals.
Okay. All right. So it's a cultural problem. So could it be possibly a problem of a particular subculture that's promoting provably false statistics about these issues? Like, if you don't want women to be afraid, why don't you spend a few moments in your life questioning if what you're telling them is the truth? I mean, that's what do you think men's rights is? It's asking the questions of the other side and looking at the other side. And you completely refuse to actually engage with our arguments. You dismiss them as misogynist or alt-right is the new thing, or just hateful towards women. You absolutely refuse. You shut down any questioning of your belief that women are victims. You say that the worst thing that you see is that women see themselves as victims, that women are afraid. Well, maybe it would behoove you to question those institutions, government funded and otherwise, that are promoting the idea that women are victims. And whenever they're questioned, say that their questioners are some horrible people who need to be thrown out from society and defunded. So maybe you should look at this movement that refuses to question itself and constantly reduces women down to victims if you're really that concerned about women being afraid of being victims. Hello?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
Shall we?
Okay, yeah.
And if you want to make it a problem of bad individuals, how is it possible that 4 or 5% of men have ruined it for everyone else? How can
The people like you, Mr. Kimmel.
Because of feminism saying that rape is a process by which all men keep all women in fear in order to control them. Because
Just a reminder, this guy teaches students, and he has a wife and daughters. Just put it out there.
Like earlier on, he conceded that rape isn't a rite of passage. But now he's saying except for, of course, 4 or 5% of people, and I bet he includes frat houses in that. It's not all men; it's just certain institutions of men that we need to gut from the inside.
And then we'll find a new one to gut.
And now here he is saying, why do 4 or 5% of men have to ruin it for everyone else? Because of fuck you, Kimmel.
Why do 4 or 5%? Because they're criminals their brains have been broken. And they are totally disturbed and disturbed. They're disturbed men. The real proper response is not to say that why do 5% of Negroes have to ruin it for the rest of black people. The appropriate response is to say, why are you casting one small segment of the population as indicative of all of the population? Why are you doing that? Why are you saying that even 5%, it's probably even much lower than that, but 5% of men, the behavior of 5% of men who are provably damaged and most likely have been raped by a woman, because that is the biggest causal factor for them to go on to become a rapist, Why would you say that those men reflect anything to do with normal men? And why would you say that by doing that, the effect is that, oh, when feminism says, well, this 5% is actually, it's more like 20 or 30. If they could get away with it, 20 or 30% of men would rape. And feminism does shit like that. And then it creates campaigns that suggest that way more than 5% of men rape, and that rape could be something that's just done by men by accident. The "Don't Be That Guy" campaigns. So when you're saying that this is horrible, that women have this fear, you have absolutely no responsibility in your movement having created it. Okay, I think I'm losing the thread, so I'm gonna just walk off my soapbox.
We're good.
Shall we continue?
Let's continue.
Yeah, we're good.
If we let that happen.
Yes, you did. As feminists, you did let that happen.
Did you see what Cassie did? I think she may have laughed at that a little bit, or at least tried to just look at how what he said, how it processes in her brain, and what her physical reaction is.
I see the subtle shake of her head. Yeah.
That was a shudder. That was a definite shudder. I do it all the time when I'm listening to Kimmel.
Oh, I think it was a head shake, actually. It's just like a what the fuck? Maybe this is where she was red pilled, as someone mentioned in the chat. She doesn't look like she's completely agreeing with this. This is his best pitch. This is his best pitch.
Kimmel does kind of come into this from what appears, either it appears this way or he's making it this way from like a defensive position. When he says, because if you ask somebody a direct question, like, do we live in a patriarchy? That's a direct question. That has a yes or no answer.
Okay, apparently
you could just answer it. What's wrong?
We forgot to read some Snapchat. So, oh God.
Super chats.
Our Mo Indanon gives us 20 Donkey Kongs coins and says, just trying to figure out how this super chat works. Well, thank you for that great philosophical insight, Mo Indanon. And Joey Jojo gives us $5 and says, nothing more than demonizing male sexuality. Disgusting. Well, currently it hasn't been really demonizing male sexuality. You can give Michael Kimmel that. He hasn't really been demonizing male sexuality.
And I wouldn't call it disgusting. Just what the fuck.
Yeah, it's just, he's just said a lot of really confusing stuff. Just stuff that is really difficult to parse logically. Rape culture is women's fear of rape, and men should pay attention to that and be concerned about women being afraid of rape. And if they're not paying attention to that and being concerned about women being afraid of rape, then they're perpetuating rape culture. So men should either agree that there's a rape culture or they're perpetuating rape culture, therefore rape culture. And then, but, only 5% of men commit rape. So why wouldn't men want to tell, if they're concerned about women being afraid of rape, why wouldn't they want to tell them that it's only a very small amount of men who do it? And also those men are actually pretty damaged. I remember myself, I used to have the same fears. Like if I was in that chair talking to Michael Kimmel and he said, are you afraid of rape? I would have to say, yes, I was. And then after learning more about men's rights and learning specifically the high rate and the causal factors behind why men rape. And I remember specifically, I was walking from my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class in the back parking lot, and it wasn't the greatest neighborhood. And I was like, oh my God, I'm afraid, because of things. And then it just washed over me. And I thought, wait a second. The vast majority of men who become rapists were raped by women. And something about that just purged me of all my fear. It just disappeared. It just lifted off of my shoulders. Like I'd never even noticed I was wearing that weight, and it was gone, and it hasn't been back. And if you were really that worried about women being afraid of rape, maybe you should talk to them about the things that actually ease that fear, like the fact that only 5% of men rape, probably even less than that. Rape is not something that can happen accidentally. That men who do rape are extremely damaged men who probably have been themselves raped by women or other men. You know, give them the information they need to resolve this stuff mentally in their minds. And whoa, lo and behold, where does that information come from? Where does that information come from, Michael Kimmel? What information could you tell women to genuinely reduce their fear of rape? You could tell them the real statistics on how often they're raped. You could tell them the real statistics on how many men are rapists. You could tell them the real statistics and the causal factors of what makes men rapists. You could tell them all of that. And where can you find those statistics, Michael Kimmel? Where can you find them? The statistics that reduce women's fear of rape. Hey, guys, where can you find those statistics? Silence. Do you want me to...
Shaman gives us $2 and says traps are not gay, they are homosexual. Carry on.
Okay, where can you find those? Did you guys hear me when I went on that rant?
Yeah,
Yes.
I said an inappropriate thing because it's funny to me.
Okay, all right. Well, I will supply the answer to my own question. Men's rights activists. We're the ones who are bringing that aspect of the conversation, and in the process, we're the ones challenging the people who are actually creating a culture of fear around rape. That would be you, Michael Kimmel. If you wanted to get rid of women's fear around rape, why don't you try being honest to them about it? Okay. Oh, looks like we're out of Snapchats. We're out of Snapchats. I guess we can give them a few minutes. Super chats, whatever the hell they are.
Cats
get another super chat.
Usually involve dicks and titties, so super chats are money.
Okay, all right. Can we get a super chat and continue?
I've known about the men's rights movement for more than 30 years. I think that at their origins, they came out of they came from the same kind of fertile soil of challenging and discomfort with traditional gender arrangements that the pro-feminist men's movement came from. That we all were at one point allies. Doesn't surprise me, for example, that that someone like Warren Farrell was the president on the board of New York Now for a couple of times. Doesn't surprise me at all. We come from the same origin. We moved in completely different directions.
Why do you think feminism has had so much success while the men's movement has a pretty bad rap?
Better stop.
Well,
okay, Phonics Shaman says, gives us $2 and says, I love your rants, Alison, keep doing them. And then also Joey Joso says, super chat, it's fucking super chat, you stupid fuck. Okay, oh, thank you. That wasn't actually one that you super chatted.
And I'm pretty sure it's Phoenix Shaman, but it might be Phonix Shaman now just because you said it.
It's probably
because Phonix Shaman loves your rants, Alison. Keep doing them.
All right, so should we move on to the after show because we don't have any more Snapchats. My back hurts, and this is okay. Super chat. Is this annoying yet? We don't have any super chats. And should we answer?
You could just call them donations.
Okay. And now you're giving me a third option that I have to juggle.
Well, I don't see how you could possibly say a word that sounds kind of like donations but is completely different. So maybe I think I might be giving you the best option.
Phonix Shaman gives us $2 and says, "Can I advertise my business via super chats?" What do you say, guys?
If you spend the money, we'll read the thing. So whatever.
All right, sure, yeah, we'll read whatever you send through, guys. You can send through whatever you like through the super chat. See,
somebody said, "Let's read some demolitions instead of donations." Get it? It's 'cause
demolitions. Okay, yeah, because I can't pronounce anything, isn't that right? Okay, yeah. Rob Wynn gives us $2.50 and says for Roma. Why wasn't that $3.50? Okay.
$3.50.
Yes, but I appreciate your offering of that for Roma, indeed, and also for SPQR.
Greece is better than Rome. I'm on Team Greece,
Shut
yo.
up. Oh God, I'm gonna get you. All right.
We can play a little bit more since we have some donations. Okay. He's gonna talk about the MRM. I can't wait.
Oh boy, I'm an all a quiver with excitements. All right, go.
This will sound a bit harsh, but a movement of the subordinate always makes a kind of moral claim on the culture. Because we do believe in the United States, we believe in these values like equality.
What the fuck did that even mean?
Okay, so he says a movement of the subordinate will always have a moral claim over essentially the dominant culture. So a women's movement is coming from is punching up. It is subordinate, right? It is underneath the men's movement. So of course it has the moral high ground over the men's movement because it's a women's movement. It's punching up. That's why.
Oh, really?
That's what he's claiming anyway. Because we're looking out for the little lady, even though they make up the majority of the population. That means that they have the moral high ground over a men's movement. Therefore, they would get more power because more people love women, and yet we hate them because we live in a patriarchy and a rape culture. Yeah.
Well, I think so.
The underdog movement gets all of the funding and attention, but still remains the underdog somehow.
In perpetuity.
Speaking of underdogs, Phoenix Shaman gives his 420 and says, "Na, it's the motherfucking DOGE." And Zeranx gives us $5 and says, "Can't send these through after show and you haven't gotten to the good part yet." Shit, where's the good part?
Oh my God. Well, I guess we'll have to just hope that people send in Snapchats and we'll get to the good part.
Super chats.
Wow. Maybe that one was for the fucking Grace comment. Jesus.
You never know, chat. Maybe Alison does actually want all of your Snapchats.
Yeah, all you've been doing is giving me super chats, and I'm bereft of feeling because of it. All right, so Joey Jojo.
Dick pics for Alison.
Jojo say.
Jojo says, gives us $5 and says, "Check out my game reviews, unboxing, and rants. I'm still starting and learning about filming, but I have content on my YouTube channel." What's your YouTube channel name? Is it Joey Jojo?
It's Joey Jojo, probably.
Okay, all right. So go to Joey Jojo's channel and check out his interesting stuff.
David Chanho.
Very good shoe.
David Chanho, love your name, gives us $2 and says, "Teal dear, please do your best autistic screeching." Can you translate that?
Is
that autistic screeching?
Okay, and
I mean, I've addressed the things that Kimmel have said by citing lengthy peer-reviewed studies and things like that. Is that not autistic screeching?
Yeah, that sounds like
according to
autistic
feminists.
that's pretty autistic.
Let me sit here and overanalyze everything you're saying and find all of the things and go to all of the websites. I shall arrange all of the websites by color.
Oh God, do you?
It's almost as though autistic people are much better at challenging authority than normal people.
Vayer gives us Nokia 50 and a bag of money. Thank you, Vayer. That's very appreciated. Phoenix Shaman gives us $2. Communism has lifted up only Mao and Stalin. Thank you for that incredibly off-topic message. I thought you were going to shill something. Wasn't that you? Anyway. Okay, and then Maxwell gives us £2 and says, "Here, have a Snapchat."
See, now we're just shilling for Snapchat. We've been doing.
Shall we?
I think we'll just hear from
Snapchat.
Let's play some.
Yeah, play some more because they gave us chats.
Super chats.
Chats of the super variety.
Fairness and justice. So when we hear that
he's
injustices
really pissing me off.
are done to people simply because of their race or their gender or their sexuality, we're morally offended. I mean, even the most right-wing people, who think it's a good thing, would be morally offended if they felt that this was actually really, happening and not just
what? Wait a second. I don't think right-wing people think that racism or sexism or any of those other isms are good things. They just don't think they're as prevalent, and that in eradicating them, they don't want to give you control over society. They don't
denying
want
by them denying the prevalence of those things, it means that they're complicit in those things, according to people like Kimmel.
Well, look, it's difficult to say whether the right wing think racism is a good thing. Again, it depends on your definition of racism. But I think what SJWs do can be defined by any criteria as racist, because they make things issues of race when they are not issues of race, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the definition of racism. So it's not about whether you think racism is good, it's whether or not you acknowledge what you're actually saying. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just burying it in fucking labyrinthine jargon. Sorry, I heard Kimmel use the word labyrinthine to describe it, and that's brilliant. That's exactly what it is.
That's a great word.
Labyrinthine.
All right. Speaking of labyrinthine, let's go to the next turn in the labyrinth.
All right. And way to go, Kimmel, for like when you talk about gender, you basically just talked about male and female. You fucking cis-normative, transphobic bigot. You left out all the non-binary folks. They exist.
But a movement of the superordinate is a little bit difficult. It's a little bit different. We don't have movements called, straight liberation. The question I would pose rhetorically is the men's rights movement really the gender version of the white nationalist movement?
What?
Because there are plenty of white people.
Lol, what?
They are the
victims. The reason I don't call myself a white rights advocate is because I can't think of many rights that non-whites have that whites don't. It's all sort of it's all in what's said. It's all in the propaganda and shit. But it's different with men and women because you could point to actual rights, Michael. But yeah, I don't think you'll ever quite see what we're getting at, will you? Because you're still living in that particular, gentrified part of upside down land where women have more rights than men have more rights than women. You've turned my brain to mush, Kimmel. You do this.
I just don't think I've fully grasped what exactly he was saying. Superordinate movements are different from subordinate movements. Okay, yeah, sure. The men's rights movement is the superordinate. You don't see anyone campaigning for white rights because presumably white people are superordinate in society, which is weird because I've not seen any rules or laws or anything like that which white people have which non-white people don't. And therefore we must consider the men's rights movement in the light of white supremacy. I don't see how point 2 follows to 3 and 4 there. Like, I don't see the link.
The parallel he's trying to draw is, because he said there's no such thing as straight liberation, right? So the idea is, there is such a thing as gay liberation because gays are the subordinate movement. Straights are the dominant culture. They're the mainstream. They are the norm. They are the people with the power. So he's trying to draw a parallel between the men's movement being the same as the straight liberation movement because men are the norm and they have the power and all of that. The straights are the norm and they have the power, and the whites are the norm and they have the power. Therefore, all of these things, it's difficult because they can't have the moral high ground because they are the superordinate. They are the ones in power. He's just, turning it into a class struggle thing. It's not very well crafted because men and women are not like blacks and whites or gays and straight people. It's just not the same. But I think that's what he's going for.
There's more of a symbiosis between men and women. Anyway, there's been a couple Snapchats, super chats. Okay, I will get there. Phoenix Shaman wants you to read this one, Teal Deer. I don't know if you can see it in the live show Discord channel.
Probably not.
Okay, it's basically he gives us $2 and you know what? It's probably not worth. Sorry, Phoenix Shaman. I tried. Maybe I can get him to repeat it after
that thing. Yes. Okay. Why on earth would I read that?
Because he's asking you to. So I
I'm
guess that's
doing
not-
this as a favor.
Yeah, I guess.
You're paying someone else in order to get me to do a favor for you.
What is this thing? I want to know what it is. What is it?
It's in the live show. Do you want me to read it, Teal Deer? Actually, Phoenix Shaman Teal Deer has a point. It's really me that it's obligated to read it, not him. So you want me to read it, Teal Deer?
Oh, it's fine. I'll do it. I don't care. It's just like you pay someone else and then expect a third party to do the thing you paid the second party for. What? I do not understand. What is this? Some sort of socialism going on here? I don't like it. But yes, Phoenix Shaman gives $2 and says, Teal Deer makes me question my sexuality. It's good to know that I'm scaring you straight.
Xerax gives us $5 and said, I'm black and straight and male. That makes me a white male, and I support the men's rights movement. I agree with Kimmel.
That makes sense to me now. That makes as much sense as Kimmel makes to me now. That's how much my brain is now.
Well, all minorities, basically where they're going to is that all minorities, if they're male, are just going to be white men. They're just going to be completely clear about it. So all minorities and all minority issues are, to be quite frank, men's issues. You might as well jump, you might as well jump a few styles ahead in the queue here, guys. If you're a minority, you might as well throw your lot in with white men and just recognize that most of your issues are actually misandry, as seen through a racial lens. Okay, Total Utilitarian gives us €2, I think. A Snapchat on a Snapchat of a super chat. Good luck, Alison.
A snapshot on a Snapchat. Sorry, a snapshot on Snapchat of a super chat, Giella. Yeah, sorry. A combination of things badly written and people not being able to talk properly.
Dave and Doucheland.
Welcome to Honey Badger Radio.
Dave and Doucheland gives us $5 or €5. I too have a new YouTube channel. I'm an Aussie living in Germany and talking about things that I notice living in here. Don't forget, like and sub to Dave and Deutschland, I think is probably the appropriate way of putting
Not
it.
Doucheland.
Deutschland.
The Great Indoors 1979 gives us €5 and says white nationalists can be women too. Is Kimmel denying that fact? I think Kimmel is in his own little spinning top of a universe. And we probably should get a little bit more done since we're technically doing the super chats in order to get more done. So, shall we?
You got it.
Victims of reverse discrimination, right? And their evidence is there's a black man in the White House.
What?
So is it possible?
Well, there was at the time.
Is this really analogous? So of course it's not.
I get so what he's saying is that the white nationalist movement are complaining about reverse discrimination, which they shouldn't call reverse discrimination. It's just discrimination. It doesn't really matter where it's coming from. And he's saying because it's a black man in the White House. So he's building a straw man, obviously. Like, this is the whole, you can't be racist to white people because they are the superorganism, and you can't be racist to the superorganism. And he's using this to build a case against, maybe you can't be sexist towards men. This is why when he talked about rape culture, he leaves male victims out. He leaves infant male victims out. He leaves boys out.
He leaves the minority of the population out.
Yeah.
But I thought the subordinate had preference over the superordinate when it came to anything. Or I'm sorry, does that rule not apply here for some reason?
Men are the minority because they are 49%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, shall we move on? Or do you want to say something else? Okay, let's go.
Not going to have very much traction. You can't really organize the people who are superordinate. Because it's hard for them to get, because the political organizing comes from a feeling of victimization, which is why the men's rights
feeling of victimization.
Yeah, but not actual victimization. Well, you know what's interesting, Michael, is that a lot of groups that are genuinely victimized do have to come to the point of recognizing it before they can agitate for their rights. Because usually when you have a long-standing type of victimization, it's embedded into the culture and there's huge cultural narratives justifying it. So the group in question may not actually feel like they're victimized, even as they experience statistical inequalities, like greater prison sentences and losing their kids and having greater rates of suicide, or even actual factual on the books legal inequalities, like having to be conscripted in order to have a franchise and be considered a citizen, to be available to conscription in order to receive or enjoy citizenship privileges. So I'm not sure where you're going with this, but from my study of history, there are a lot of groups that have experienced disenfranchisement that actually had to work to recognize it. And they had to work backwards from some black and white provable facts of disenfranchisement to a feeling of victimhood. Because, like I said, they were usually socialized to not recognize their victimhood. A lot of slaves were like that, Michael Kimmel. They didn't actually recognize they were victims. Harriet Tubman very famously said she wished, of all of her regrets, not being able to convince more slaves that they were slaves was the biggest. So there you go.
Victimhood doesn't equal victim culture.
Yeah.
You can acknowledge the idea of your victimhood without turning it into a culture or an addiction, like we've seen.
How many times do you think a queen complains versus a peasant? How many times do you think that a queen thinks of her victimhood versus a peasant thinks of his or hers? When you're in a position of actually recognizing facets of the world around you as being a victimhood, a form of victimhood, of circumstances that you're in, that is actually a privileged position to start from that position. It's privilege to believe that the world should conform to what you want it to be. A lot of people who are not privileged do not start from the position that the world should conform to the way you want it to be. They have to get to the point where saying, well, hey, maybe the world should be a little more fair about how it treats me. They don't start out thinking the world should conform to whatever they want it to be and whatever they think it should be. That takes a while to get there. All right. I don't know if I've made anything that actually elucidates.
No, it's yeah, sure.
Okay.
Shall we?
You make the kind of points that take a while to sink in, Alison. Don't worry.
All right.
People have to watch it again or something.
It's Maslow's hierarchy, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you're complaining about things like discrimination, you're higher up than someone who has nothing to complain about because they're too busy trying to scrape food from under a rock.
Mm-hmm. And the idea that society is there, like, to provide you stuff, the whole concept of damsel victim awareness, the damsel awareness, the idea that you're owed being saved is itself a privileged position. And there's one gender that believes that it's owed being saved, and it's not men. Okay, let's continue.
The rights movement makes that claim that men are the victims of discrimination, but it doesn't have much traction because you look around and it's hard to see it.
It's hard to see it.
Yeah, they do.
Totally there, like the Holy Spirit.
It's hard to see men's victimization. Could it be, like, do you think that throughout slave-owning societies, for example, that slaves were in a constant belief about their own disenfranchisement? No, because the entire apparatus of social identity was structured in such a way to hide it. Slaves figured that they owed, or that they deserved being slaves, that they deserved it. And in fact, the violation of agency can spark people to want to see where they have power rather than where they lack it. So the less power you have over your life, the more inclined you're wanting to focus on those parts of your life where you do have power, rather than those parts of your life where you don't. For simple survival, if nothing else. Okay, guys, where are those super chats? Shall we continue?
Yeah, let's go. Give them one more. We'll play one more, and if we don't see a super chat, we'll go to the after show.
All right.
Right here, actually. MRAs believe that feminist activism is dependent on identifying women as victims and men as perpetrators.
Well, see, this is the part that I don't agree with.
Can we go back a bit? I didn't quite catch what...
Cassie, basically, she's kind of like turned away from him at the time. She says men's rights activists believe that feminists, they build their entire, their whole foundation of their ideology on placing women in a victim role and men in a perpetrator role. And then Kimmel says, see, here's where I disagree, which is weird because he hasn't really agreed with MRAs thus far, but I guess this is where the disagreement begins. But that's what he said. Do you want to go back a little bit?
Yeah,
I'll
go back
to about here. Okay.
Activism is dependent on identifying women as victims and men as perpetrators.
Well, see, this is the part that I don't agree with. I think that the feminist movement is based on the idea that women have been victims, but not that men are the perpetrators. That feminism is about systemic inequality. It's not about blaming men. Once you know about this, once you see the discrimination, once your child comes to you and says this happened to her, once your mother tells you that she was sexually harassed when she was in college or in high school, once your partner says, well, I was actually assaulted at a party.
Okay, pause it for a second. Once you talk to a man who said he was sexually assaulted and then some guy beat him for complaining about it, once you've met a man who was raped and reported it to the police, but they said, yeah, ha 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 ha, and then he had to pay for the child that was conceived of the rape. Like, what's your point with all of these anecdotes, these generic anecdotes, Michael Kimmel? What point are you trying to make?
If men aren't to blame, but it's systemic sexism and oppression against women, but men are not to blame, then what is he talking about?
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. So it's women are victims, but men aren't the perpetrators. But the patriarchy is the perpetrator. Okay, well, what is the patriarchy? What did he say it was at the beginning? Women's fear of something.
The patriarchy is not the rule of the father, but the patriarchy is the idea that women are in the subordinate role. They are oppressed systematically, institutionally, but not by men. By ideas?
Okay, yeah, so women are so weak and pathetic that they're being held down by an idea, by something that isn't real. This reminds me of a conversation I tried having with a feminist ages ago. And they talked about like how, think of patriarchy as a prison. And there's like a prison tower in the middle, and that if you go out of your cell, you're going to be killed. Except there's no one actually in the tower. You're free to sort of leave whenever it was. It's like, okay, so are you saying that at some point there was actually someone who was the patriarchy or something, which formed an organization which was the patriarchy and then defined everything as it is? And now everyone is just living under some grand delusion where they follow the rules when there's no reason to still do so? Because that sounds very far-fetched and frankly ridiculous.
I just remembered the word panopticon. I think I did a poop together video of that purple-haired girl who talked about. I think this is one of Foucault's ideas. Good on you, yes. Foucault. You're a fucking fountain, Foucault. The idea of the panopticon, of a prison that doesn't have an actual sentinel, just an imaginary one, which perfectly describes this patriarchy theory that you've come up with.
Yeah, that was. I think that conversation actually was on that video of yours. How things come together after like 2 years.
After all of this, he says men should care about women because they feel afraid, and we shouldn't care about men because they don't feel afraid. And patriarchy is also a feeling.
So is he suggesting that patriarchy is literally women's feelings?
Yes.
Let's finish the thought. We got two more super chats.
God is what women say it is.
Zernax gives us $5 and says someone should tell Kimmel that the Declaration of Sentiments disagrees with his idea that men aren't viewed as perpetrators. And Joey Jojo gives $5 as well and says feminism is never about equality. Feminism is just about keeping feminism alive. Okay, let's finish up with David Kimmel, Michael Kimmel, not David Kimmel. I don't know why I'm giving him the name David, because I have to
Jimmy Kimmel? Oh no, we already had Jimmy Kimmel's emotionally charged statements. This is a different Kimmel with emotionally charged statements that have no basis in reality.
But one of them has fallen from grace, and one of them was never in grace.
You know, then you kind of face an existential choice. Now you can't ignore it anymore. You either say, well, you know, I'm a victim too, or you say that's wrong, right? I don't want that to happen to somebody else. And so it seems to me that, you know, the idea that we have this Mars, Venus, women victims.
What the fuck does this have to do with anything?
I don't know any feminist women who think that.
Really? For fuck's sake, that's all you talk about. Every single piece of your goddamn literature, academia. I mean, we have a game that's essentially how can feminists make women victims of cashews, ceiling tiles,
conditioning,
bits of string. Like, and the funny thing is that this is not even an exaggeration. There is a feminist freaking goddamn academic paper that makes women victims of sperm banks. How do you not see this? That yes, your entire philosophy is about turning women into victims of things. You never say, oh, wait, well, you say you're sexually assaulted. Well, what's the situation for men? No, you don't. And anybody who says, well, can we bring up the situation for men? You say is a misogynist, or is playing what about the men's, or this is oppression Olympics. What did you just say? The two reactions are to say, oh, I'm a victim too, and to say, oh, that's horrible. I wonder which reaction you support and which reaction you actually disagree with, Michael Kimmel. I'm guessing that you don't support the reaction where a guy says, oh, yeah, you talked about having your butt grabbed in a bar. Well, you know, some woman took me out back and put a knife to my throat and raped me. So women aren't the entire, do you think that that's not acceptable? Like, to talk about? I mean, you're bifurcating the reactions, and I assume that you're not saying that men talking about how they're victims is an acceptable reaction to women describing their victimhood. Therefore, how can you not be saying that you are denying men's victimhood? Okay, wait. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe he does say that men talking about how they're also victims of something is a legitimate response to bringing up women's victimhood. Does he?
I don't remember. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I think that's a myth. I mean, most of the feminist women I know would love men so much that they say, we need you to be around the kids more. We need you to be home more. We need you to be our allies.
Then why don't they support shared custody?
Just sounds like they want men around to do stuff. That doesn't sound like people who care about them. It sounds like people who need men to do things.
Why don't you support men having equal rights to their children with you? If you really support men, why it's this weird thing. Like, if you really support men, why don't you support their rights?
It's weird, like the feminists on the ground do, because the majority of the feminists are just regular people going about their regular day. It's just they have these massive halls in every university where they stand around and go, ah, and they like sort of sing and praise about destroying the infidels and shit. Those are the people we have a problem with, Michael. And you are one of their greatest imams. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, all right, let's continue. Actually, yeah, we still have one Snapchat on, so.
We want you to, we want to have good conversations with you. We want to be as smart as you. We want to be as interesting as you, because we want to have really good conversations with you.
What the
We're absolutely convinced.
Hang on, does that mean men are just better than women? So women look up to men and want to be them. So men are superior to women. Surely that means they should run society and control everything then, right?
But
Oh God, I'm losing. Okay, let's just. Does he make a fucking point here?
He's a professor. I don't know. Going.
Okay, keep going.
To be around an airhead Victoria's Secret model. We're convinced of this. We believe in you. So I think prove him right.
What the fuck? What a smug look on his face when he said that. Oh,
I can't do
God.
any more of this.
I know.
Quick
And
reminder.
we don't
that-
have to because the Snapchats have run out. So
By the way, quick reminder that not every time a girl plays with her hair,
Super chats.
she's hot on you. Sometimes she's just trying to think of something else.
yeah.
This is why I don't understand signs. It's not because of autism. It's because I recognize that sometimes when girls play with their hair, it's not because they fancy you.
Oh, can we just go back?
Yeah.
So he talks
Sometimes
about.
it's a coping mechanism.
Okay, I'm
Sometimes it's a stress outlet.
trying to straighten the labyrinth. Okay, so he talks about how women describe being sexually assaulted to him. And then he just talks about men responding either to say, "Oh, that's really bad," or "Oh, I'm also a victim." And then he talks about women wanting to bring men into the home, but to have them have children, take care of their children, and also want to be able to talk to them on the same level. And what did Cassie say? Oh, Cassie said that feminists want to make men into perpetrators and women into victims. Wow, I don't think he answered her question, except I think that he denied it. Please, okay, I think we're done. Are we done?
The Great Indoors gives us €2 and says word salad.
Yeah.
And then
That's a good point. Well, is that enough to carry on?
no. Ryan Field says the good news is I get to watch the stream. The bad news is that I'm unemployed. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. I think that we need.
But you still can take pleasure in knowing that you are, in fact, the superordinate superpower because penis. So you don't really need a job. Just go out and dominate a woman with your patriarchal superpowers.
No, I think I need a bit of a break to rest my back, and then we'll just go into the after show. If you're interested in joining us in the after show, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. I don't understand how that.
We almost got halfway through with this one. It's not bad.
Yeah, we almost did. So
Please don't give us $200. We won't carry on.
no, we won't. Come on, let's do this. Bye bye.